An unfaithful wife was caught in the act, and she paid a heavy price for it. In this audio story, you'll hear fascinating details about her infidelity and how much she regretted her choice. Are you ready to hear a story that will make you reconsider your life decisions? I want to tell you a story that happened to me when I was young. At the time, I was working at a fairly large restaurant with a companion in an honorary position as a security guard. To be precise, at the time only my friend was working there for quite a long time. Well, he helped me get a job there just a couple of weeks before this incident. And it was because of the fact that a friend was stuck in that restaurant for about a year, and he will play one of the main roles in this story. That restaurant was open 24 hours a day, and the shift schedule was set up in such a way that each successive shift would check the previous one. Obviously, this wouldn't 100% save you from food theft or anything else, but still. When the new shift checks the previous one before coming to work, there was more order. Anyway, by morning our shift was coming to an end. The sun had already risen, and little by little people from the new shift began to arrive at work. Someone was changing in the service check room. The waitresses were handing over the internal electronic accounting system to the new shifts. And I was quietly collecting all my chargers and other phone wires from my desk. Suddenly, I saw on one of the monitors that one of our senior waitresses, who was then known as the manager of the hall, was dragging what looked like a heavy bag closer to the service entrance. I walked out of our office with video surveillance and stopped her halfway. "Helen, where are these going?" I asked her, a little embarrassed. She was older than me in age. She was a little over 30, and she has worked here for years. "You're just in time. Help the poor woman to a cab," she said to me, and nodded at this bag of hers, standing on the floor and leaning on her leg in pantyhose. A few seconds pass. I didn't have time to say yes or no before that friend of mine walks in from the same service entrance. We said hello, and my friend, being on duty, was obliged to react, and he did. "Elena Andreevna, I need to look at your bag," said Nikolai, and offered to open her bag independently and voluntarily. "Oh well, are you serious?" Elena Andreevna smiled her fake smile and looked at Kolian, but this trick did not work with him. "I go on duty and do my job. If we have a shortage here, the shortage is on our shift. The responsibility for this, as a security guard, is mine first and foremost, so let's not start and explain the obvious things to each other here. Open the bag." Elena looked at me, but I was already beginning to guess that the matter is not clean here, and secondly, the experienced Nikolai in such a case knows better how to act. She pushed a bag for us, and after pushing the lock, we pulled out the groceries right under the cameras. And they were not much, but all of them were expensive, and seafood and alcohol in the trunk. "I must take you to the manager," said my friend with a sigh, and together we went to the office on the second floor. I do not know whether it was lucky and madam, or vice versa. You decide for yourself, but it was in the morning, and the manager was already at his workplace. We explained the situation. I quickly ran downstairs and copied onto a flash drive the video footage from the camera inside, which perfectly shows her heading straight for the exit from the camera outside, which showed the cab that pulled up behind us to our service exit, and after standing there for about 15 minutes, drove away with nothing. Oleg Ivanovich, our manager at the time, was about 45. By this middle age, of course, he was already married, had children, and most importantly, had a very flexible and lively mind. And I think so, by and large, of course he suspected that he was dragging from the kitchen a little bit at a time, but still dragging. But it's impossible to track everything 100% there. So because of some 2 candies or a bottle of vodka, of course, never raised a scandal. But here, firstly, the amount of damage is already quite a lot, more than the salary of our Lena Andreevna. And secondly, all these events took place in the presence of several people. So there was no way back for Lena. As they say, the case received a resonance. And like in such a situation, any person would have burned with shame, but not Lenashka. Exacerbating her already not too enviable plight, She almost from the doorstep said, but only in a mild way, that they say the manager has an expensive Jeep, but she is a single mother with a child. She works here allegedly tirelessly, and now the child's birthday soon, and she allegedly have nothing to buy for this day. From this amount of products, the restaurant, in her opinion, will not become poor, and it will be a significant help to her. Plus, if she is now just like that and let go, of course, it will look like a purely masculine act. Not like now, 3 men alternately asking questions to a fragile woman. It is not at all masculine and very, very unethical. We all just looked at each other slowly and silently. What she was counting on, saying such nonsense, I personally do not know, but looking at the manager, it seemed to me for a moment that he was almost imbued with her story. I suddenly thought, but whether our Oleg Ivanovich will not forgive this mademoiselle. Wow, if she forgave me and Kolya and Oleg Ivanovich would certainly look like idiots. Why do you need security at all, if now it's all just a hushed up and let go? To prevent such a development, I started first. Well, why do you need 3 bottles of this stuff if you went out to a birthday party for your 8-year-old son? There was no answer. Oleg Ivanovich asked her to go out the door, and immediately after the door closed, the development of events began to go more cheerfully. She is not as simple as she pretends to be, said my friend, and went on to explain to Oleg Ivanovich, and generally to me, that she is only pretending here because she has been caught, but there is not, nor can there be, any lack of money. There were no delays with wages, that's first. Second, her ex-husband regularly comes to visit her, and by all appearances, the reindeer. Security guard Nikolay often sees a car arrives at the service entrance, but it is our Elena Andreevna gets in only once. It seems that even after the divorce, she felt that her husband, so to speak, away from her not too far, she raises him now, and allows it only when she is in the mood for it. So, first of all, she certainly has the money, and secondly, with a daddy like that, it's easy for her to get it, and that's probably what she does. But the interesting thing is that they originally divorced because of her cheating. It was literally about a year ago, and it was a customer from our home restaurant, specifically from among the Golden Youth. She, being a waitress at the time, met him in our restaurant, and at the moment when all this information, of course, leaked to the staff, our valiant security guard Nicholas, at the monitor even approximately remembered who it could be from among the young and such rich customers. That's the way it is. After such stories, Oleg Ivanovich became more hesitant, but he still did not base his decision only on one single story of our Nicholas, gave her a chance, and, inviting her back into the office, asked what she would choose. Apologize to the 2 shifts and stay with the shame of working here and continue or go away and take care of everything of her own free will. Many of our Oleg Ivanovich. He apparently has not often encountered such a special, and apparently seriously thought that such people can ever apologize. Of course, having a conceit loaded to the skies, as well as a personal deer in a decent Jeep. Any apology from this Lena was out of the question, of course. She sat down next to us with a smirk, and having written this statement of hers, headed off into the sunset. Or rather, into the dawn. But it was already 10 in the morning. That's how a comrade came in for his shift, and I got a pretty good lesson for my age at the time. Until that moment, I thought Lena was a competent manager with an inner core. Maybe I could even learn something from her. And here it is. To make a long story short, I will probably remember that morning for the rest of my life. Did you think your life was beautiful and perfect until one day a random situation shattered all your confidence? That's exactly what happened to the husband I'm going to tell you about today. His life seemed so unclouded until one day he uncovered his wife's infidelity thanks to a cab driver. What he heard made him shudder and rethink everything he knew about his life. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of how one random situation helped a husband figure out his wife's infidelity. I met Natasha at an ordinary anniversary party. I don't really like noisy celebrations by nature, but she turned out to be the exact opposite of me in this respect. And if I sat quietly and quietly ate my favorite salads that night, Natalia was active. She was in charge of the whole feast. The thing is that she worked as a host of such events, and to me, as a hardened couch potato, it was very interesting to talk with such an unusual mademoiselle. Whether the short or long, in general, we began to meet with her, and later moved in together and got married. Opposites attract. This phrase, Natalia, and I heard from almost every comrade or relative of ours on someone else's side. And the note, in general, may be so, but judging by my history, these opposites also repel from each other with exactly the same force, if not stronger. To work in such a job, you have to have certain character traits. As I remember now, a friend of mine delicately hinted to me, it's a job of constant drinking. And all that follows from this, well, as it were, said to me then Dima. Well, what do we, all who lead the party, now and take under one roof? I answered him then and forgot out this conversation. But recently there was an occasion to remember it. Natasha, I am already pretty fed up with your activities. For the 100th time, I started talking to her about her work. But she didn't even want to hear out the idea of changing professions. As much as I earn there, I will not earn anywhere else, she told me. And then I had these thoughts. Think about it, because the woman became a married woman. After all, it should impose some restrictions on life. As I naively thought at the time, a man and a woman after marriage is a family. And accordingly, they can now do not everything they did before the wedding. Now, for example, it is not good to come home at 2 in the morning. Go on vacation with friends or counting girlfriends and do not tell anyone about it. Spend the entire salary, well, for example, in the casino and so on. Now there are 2 of us, especially since Natalia wanted to multiply this number. What do I mean? That I regularly heard from her about the child she wanted, and I regularly picked her up at, like 3 o'clock in the morning. One of those 2 things I'm sure I should have crossed off. But there was no way I expected them both to be crossed out at once. Tonight, I'm paired with a girl for another birthday party, Natasha told me, and began arranging all her makeup supplies by the mirror. For how long? How will it go? She got dressed, packed her wonder suitcase with the dress and all the other stuff, and left at 5 o'clock, hailing a cab. As evening passed, I was about to go to bed. After spreading out the blanket, I called my wife. Do you want me to pick you up, or are you still screaming? We're not done here. You just go back to sleep. I'll call a cab when I'm done. That's fine. I unplugged my phone and didn't say anything else to her then, but I said quite a bit the next morning, and that's what it was like. I woke up a couple of hours later to a few pokes with my key on our iron door. I opened the steel door, and there was my wife standing in front of me, and of course, with a certain smell. I went to bed. Natasha immediately fell into it as well. In the morning, I woke up early, then she got up and drank probably a liter of water. I look over, she looks a little too broody. What do you say, you fashion? I asked her, and it turned out that there was no way she could locate her cell phone. But after calling her restaurant where you were yesterday, I handed her my phone, but they said they couldn't find the phone. Wait, so you just have to call your own phone. I selected her number in the phone book, and after a few rings, a man's voice answered me. Did you find the phone? Yeah. Where should we meet? Are you sure you want to meet? That voice asked me. I didn't understand. I found myself confused. Why wouldn't I want to meet? This is our phone. I'll give you a reward. What could be the problem here? Okay, let's go there and there, then in half an hour. I, of course, went to get the phone. The wife was, how should I say, not really in a position to go anywhere. Of course, she vowed not to put another drop of alcohol in her mouth, but you know all those vows the morning after birthdays, it's dust. Long story short, there was a cab driver in front of me with his cell phone, wife in hand. He was dropping his wife off yesterday from that event. I got out of my car, was about to take out a couple of bills, but as if to reward him, to which I saw in his eyes not my question. "Something is wrong?" I asked him. "And by the way, why did you ask me on the phone if I still really wanted to go out with you?" The cab driver asked, "And you, if it's not a secret, who would you be? And what do you look like?" "Yes, husband, I am the husband. This is definitely our phone, don't worry. You can see that it says my husband when I call on it." He was silent, then added, "Yes, I can see that. I thought it wasn't you who was coming, but the man I had a little fight with yesterday over her." "What man?" I asked him, to be more specific. He asked me to sit down in his car. Wait a minute. I noticed that he switched to my first name and realized that our conversation was going to be about something serious. He began the conversation. "Yesterday, when I came to pick up this wife of yours, I stood there for about 15 minutes. From the door of the restaurant, where I was called, she came out first by herself, and right after her the young man came out as well. They couldn't say goodbye to each other, and of course they couldn't decide where anyone was going. The woman came to the car, said hello to me, and while standing on the street gave me her address. And this young man, hugging her from behind, said he was coming with us, and that he would have a completely different address. She refused him, but he kept wanting to take her to his place. In the end, they stood there kissing for about 15 minutes. I asked him 10 times if they were coming or not. They didn't pay any attention to me. Well, then he took her and pinned her to my car. And she had a suitcase in her hand, and she was jamming my car with her suitcase, or maybe it was her jacket or jeans or something ironed. He pressed down. She kept jingling. I shouted out of the car, "You're going to scratch my car. Young men, are we going as a result or not?" And this guy started yelling at me. I mean, I had already dashed his hopes of continuing the evening. And then I made this remark to them. "So when you called me today, I was pretty sure it was him." The cab driver took the video recorder out of its holder on the windshield, pressed a few buttons on it, and showed me a video clip from the night before. On it, I saw everything the cab driver had just described to me, including the sounds, rattling, of the iron on the back door of the car. I think it was the buckles from my wife's leather jacket. Then she got into the cab and apparently forgot her phone on the back seat. Anyway, that was it. I went back to the house and told her what had happened to her yesterday and how. At first I wanted to copy that video of the cab driver to let her admire it and not leave a chance to justify herself. But that's who and what to prove. We both know what happened, and we're not the only ones. Anyway, the only last excuse she could come up with was that she supposedly got bored without the baby. And if we had decided on him, none of this would have happened for sure. But they were too cheap and too ridiculous excuses. And after listening to them through sheer force, I gave her until tonight. Until tonight for the move. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to rate it and give it a like. Thank you for watching.